Hello and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
And this is part 2 of our review of Ring of Honor's Final Battle 2008. If you are firing up this show and you have not listened to part 1, stop what you're doing, listen no further. Go back and listen to part 1 first. We open with a little history of Ring of Honor, how it got here. We recap some awesome matches in the first half of this show.
Including the opening match on that show is Kenny Omega versus Claudio Castagnoli, who would go on to be Cesaro in WWE. So that's a dream match right there if you didn't follow those two guys on the independent scene. A bunch of other stuff. I believe the, if you want to call it the main event of part 1 of our review of Final Battle 2008 was Jay and Mark Briscoe versus Katsuhiko Nakajima and Kensuke Sasaki. So no shortage of stars on that show. And if you're a longtime listener of this podcast, you will know that nothing offends Jeremy Deemer more. Well, nothing offends him more than when two wrestlers facing off wear the same color gear. But outside of that, nothing offends Jeremy more than when people listen to part 2, but don't listen to part 1 of a show.
You have no idea how upset I am every time I look at the download numbers and I see that WrestleMania 19 Part 2 is somehow ahead of WrestleMania 19 Part 1 from Season 1, and that WrestleMania review, Part 1 and 2 combined, one of our best shows. And definitely, if you skipped Part 1, you should go back and listen to that as well. So we'll start part 2 by talking about the Ring of Honor title number 1 contender match, Austin Aries versus Tyler Black. You mentioned at the top the future Seth Rollins here as Tyler Black. At this point in time in Ring of Honor, was not a huge Austin Aries fan. I know you never were.
No.
He was fine for me for a little bit, but I was like this crowd with a same old shit chant and kind of run his course. This is where I was in my Austin Aries fandom, and Tyler Black, to me, it really we were still a little ways away from me not think he was just starting to become an interesting wrestler at this point. He was always kind of too generic for me until right around this time frame. He started to get a personality around this time frame, I think.
Yeah, I am 100% with you. I was not a Tyler Black fan at all at this point. Austin Aries was one of those guys I acknowledged was good, but never thought he was great. Part of it was I think a bitterness from the indie scene at this time period where I was a huge Alex Shelley fan, and I desperately wanted Alex Shelley to be the guy that got the type of push that Austin Aries had. But yeah, Tyler Black, again, a guy who I've been watching for probably a good 3 years at this point, from seeing him in IWA Mid-South, NWA Midwest, some of the Iowa-based promotions that they had relationships with. And to your point, just, thought he was super generic. In a lot of ways, just felt like a lot of the things I was starting to really dislike about the indie scene at this point. And then also, he was a member of the Age of the Fall group here at this point in Ring of Honor. With Jimmy Jacobs.
I had totally forgot that until they started mentioning it. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, we'll talk about it here.
I hated that storyline, that stable. It was one of the things that really started me down my path of, for a while, not really being into Ring of Honor that much. So all that said, I was very interested here in 2021 to watch this match and see what I ended up thinking of it, because it was two guys who were admittedly talented that I had zero interest in watching back then. So you referenced the crowd. We had dueling chants at the start of this match.
Well, and before we even got into the match, Tyler Black coming out of the entranceway, slips coming out, but was able to keep his balance. I couldn't imagine if he had fallen what this crowd would have done. But yeah, you're right. The crowd was definitely into the dueling chants to begin for both Austin Aries and Tyler Black.
Absolutely. And we have what was a theme throughout this show, both in part 1, which we reviewed last week, and part 2 here. Great job by Lenny Leonard and Dave Prazak on the call. Dave Prazak was a god among men, filling us in throughout this show on what happened, if this was a rematch, when these guys had wrestled before, what brought us to this point.
With dates, he had
Yes.
dates and places for
Dates,
all of those.
places, the wacky names of the show that Ring of Honor would give. Glory by Honor, Part 2, Night 1, Side B, LP3. Like, it was basically that level of detail. And we're told that Tyler Black won their previous battle in Collinsville, Illinois, with the God's Last Gift small package driver. And so that's what led us here to this number 1 contenders match. And yeah, we're ready to get going with a lockup here to start.
Yeah, my notes say, ew, Black was in Age of the Fall with stupid Jimmy Jacobs.
Well, the thing that made me most angry about that was that I was a huge Necro Butcher fan back then.
Who amongst us? Yeah.
Huge fan of Necro, seeing him in IWA live and, elsewhere, CZW, other places on tape. And so then his introduction, or the end game of him being in Ring of Honor when he's at like his highest point, his biggest buzz, coming off of the crazy match against Samoa Joe in IWA Mid-South and the ECW arena, all these things, he ends up being part of the Age of the Fall with Jimmy Jacobs and Tyler Black and a whole crew that rotated around. But I just remember that was a big part of why I hated the Age of the Fall storyline so much. But here we're kind of towards the, I guess you could say, the end of that stable. But that's neither here nor there. The match gets going, lock up, and we get a clean break as they're back up into the ropes, which I wouldn't necessarily have expected here with these two guys.
Oh, more mat wrestling to open the match. Aries in control early. He gets reversed into a head scissors on the mat by Black. Aries then does his headstand escape and tries to turn it into a quick drop kick, like all in one motion. Black has it scouted and is able to avoid it.
Yes, that's the classic Aries counter from the you don't powerbomb Kidman and you don't put Austin Aries into a head scissors when he's on the mat, because he will pop up and drop kick you. But as you said, longtime opponents, Tyler Black has it scouted and gets out of the way. The other thing that Prazak notes is that at this point, we're in the Tyler Black has world title potential, but he hasn't won a title yet portion of his career. He hasn't won the big one. And so the question is, can he finally win a big one, if not the big one, here against Austin Aries?
Aries puts on the head scissors, and Black does the headstand into the drop kick out of the head scissors. Aries' own move gets a good reaction from the crowd.
Yes, very nice touch, and I'm already enjoying this match more than I was expecting or allowing myself to admit that I would.
Chop battle. Aries, briefly with an advantage, misses the power elbow attempt.
Oh, God. And this is where I remember how much I can't stand Austin Aries with that stupid back and forth pandering arm gestures before he hits the weak imitation of a power drive elbow. God, I hated that. And this is where the crowd starts chanting, same old, yeah.
Stomp to the face by Black. Big knee drop, but only a 1 count.
A weird jumping knee drop. It's like, imagine if you were to do, like what a baby face misses a non-top rope splash like they always do. Imagine if you were to do that, but you just landed on the guy with your leg instead of your chest. Like, he does not do a knee drop. It's the weirdest thing. I don't know. This was not the AJ Styles leaping scissor knee drop. That's for sure. This was
not, no. Snake Eyes in the corner by Black. Black does his wacky dance in the corner before charging in.
This is where I remember how annoyed I was by Tyler Black, particularly going to shows live and him doing this weak mosh entrance. Like, he does it here before he does the knee to the face. Oh, God.
Yeah, it took too much time. Aries whips Black to the buckle. He mockingly does Black's little dance.
This I approved of.
Then he charges in and eats a stiff boot to the face. Black on the apron goes to springboard off the top into the ring, but Aries shoves him off to the floor, then follows it up with a tope between the bottom and middle ropes to the floor.
Yes, the heat-seeking missile later go on to be called the Lope Suicida, fun with puns. And this is where I remembered, that's the one thing I liked about Austin Aries, that awesome low suicide dive that he did. I should also mention, by the way, I think the other thing that made me bitter about Austin Aries was that he was the guy to unseat Samoa Joe after Joe's incredible ROH title reign. I just remember being so pissed. There were so many other guys that I wanted to see win the title, and it just felt weak to me. It was like the ROH version of Takeshi Rikio being the guy to defeat Kenta Kobashi and end his title reign. It just never sat well with me.
Aries sits Black in a chair against the barricade, and Aries hits him with a drop kick. This is you mentioned in part one that the Tree of Woe was a popular move. Also a popular move was sitting a guy in the corner next to the barricade and doing some sort of offensive move to him. Here was a drop kick.
Yes, I do not feel like there were road agents working, which is good and bad. Like I a lot of times I think road agents are like a really bad thing for wrestling. But here on this show, it might not have been bad to have a meeting, maybe sit guys down in chairs in a corner before the show and say, hey, maybe don't everybody do the same spot. But grand scheme of things, it's fine.
Aries puts on a front face lock and he hits some knee strikes, then flips over into a bridge called Last Chancery. Black to the ropes for a break.
Yeah, the Last Chancery I always just felt like was, I don't know, it was Austin Aries saying, oh, I like that Bryan Danielson. He does some cool submissions, but I can't take the cattle mutilation. I can't take his move. What can I take that's exactly like it almost?
but a less cool version.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
On the apron, Aries puts Black on his shoulders like fireman's carry style. Black fights out with elbows, reverses so that Aries is on Black's shoulders, but they're still on the apron. Black then basically hits an F5.
Yes.
He spins Aries off his shoulders where Aries lands chest first onto the apron as Black falls to the floor.
No, I mean, that's exactly what it was. It's not Tony Schiavone saying, oh, he hit him with almost something. This was an F5 onto the apron. I did not expect this. This was awesome. The fans are chanting ROH, and rightfully so. And so far, as both men are down on the floor, I am eating my 2008 words because this is a freaking awesome professional wrestling match to this point.
Me too. I'm like, wow, I really thought that these guys were boring at this point, but
yes.
No, I'm enjoying myself highly.
I think what it was I needed 13 years away from Austin Aries and Tyler Black to be able to watch one of their matches and enjoy it with an open mind. I needed 13 years away from that stupid elbow drop or that idiotic mosh pit in the corner. I needed all that time to be able to be okay with it.
Black goes for the springboard off the top again. Aries moves again, but Black, after landing on his feet, hits a kick to knock Aries to the floor.
Yeah, Pele, basically. And then this dive, Jesus Christ. Tyler Black, particularly by ROH standards, is not a small guy. And what he does here is just ridiculous. And you'll describe the move exactly, but just imagine a human as an asteroid tumbling through space, a comet breaking through the atmosphere and landing on Earth. That is basically what Tyler Black does here. It's just beautiful stuff.
No, it was. It gets a huge running start and hits the dive over the top rope, wiping out Aries. And like you said, this is a big guy to be flipping over the top rope like that.
This is, when you say dive, it is a moonsault, but out of a all-in-one motion, out of a dead run. This almost cartwheeling style backflip nearly lands on his feet. This is if you have not seen Tyler Black do this dive, you have not seen anyone else do it. It's unique. It's different from a Sasuke special. It is just
it's almost like with the Fosbury flop into a dive, like over the top, like moonsault. Yeah, it's very impressive.
Something else. It is, again, very impressive, and it makes me mad because I don't want to like this match. I don't want to give Tyler Black / Seth Rollins credit because I've never been a fan. And God damn it, this match is really good.
Black tries a buckle bomb, but Aries counters into the last chancery again.
Thank God, because it would have broken Aries' neck if Sting in that story.
He didn't tap, so Aries goes back to the knee strikes. Aries goes for the brainbuster, but it's reversed to a roll-up for a 2 count. As Aries kicks out of the roll-up, Black kicks him in the back of the head instantaneously. This was very cool.
Yes.
Then he grabs him for a buckle bomb into the corner. Another near fall after the buckle bomb. Black to the top. He's going for the Phoenix Splash. And Jimmy Jacobs on the ramp.
God, Dinosaur Kevin Sullivan. Here he is again. We haven't seen him enough yet on this show.
Yeah, Jimmy Jacobs on the ramp says, "No flippity-doos." And Black ignores him, goes for it, misses the Phoenix Splash. Aries hits the brainbuster, goes to the apron to climb the ropes, but he slips and falls to the floor.
This was so great. He falls to the floor in exhaustion. I don't know if this was the plan or not, but to me it added to the match and the build to this finish. And Aries, whether he meant to or not, he went with it. He sold the exhaustion so great on the floor before he got back in. I love this.
Yeah, he does a stumble on the outside. He's selling that he doesn't have his wits about him, although it appears he just slipped and he was he did fine selling it, but then as people were getting into it, he almost started comically overselling it, took it a little too far. If he would have just kept the subtlety a little bit more, it would have been better, but still making the best of a bad situation there. Aries this time goes to the top, nails the 450 splash, and gets the pin. Aries wins and is the number 1 contender. Jimmy screams at him after the match, screaming at Tyler Black, "You were supposed to be the chosen one." Jacobs shoves him. Black shoves him back. Jacobs kicks him low and
first Jacobs, Tyler shoves him down, and then Jacobs is like, "Whoa, calm down. Like, we're okay. We used to be tag champs. Let's sort it out," and goes to shake his hand, and then they slap hands, and Jacobs just obliterates his groin, kicks him low, says, "You screwed me," and then noted MMA practitioner Jimmy Jacobs locks in his end-time guillotine choke.
Yes, and he puts the guillotine on Black. Jacobs almost attacks him with a banquet chair, but then switches to a folding chair. He's going to Pillmanize the neck of Black, but Aries comes back to make the save. But Aries grabs the chair and nails Black in the head with the chair instead. He's busted open, and Aries and Jacobs double team Black.
Yeah,
fun match,
Dave
though.
Prazak makes the point that they aren't a unit, but they have a common enemy. Tyler Black, we get close-ups of his bleeding head, and he's going to the back. This is clearly all built around trying to, turn Tyler Black face, which the fans were ready for, at least here in the Hammerstein Ballroom, and build a lot of sympathy for him going forward.
Yeah, it was a fun match. Apparently, reading some of the news coming out of the show, apparently during this match, Aries punched a fan.
What?
They
did not. I guess that's one of the benefits of it taking 2.5 months for these shows to come out on DVD at this point, was they had a lot of time to edit that out.
Yeah, apparently there was a fan that was pushing Austin Aries, and Aries did the kind of fake punch to make you flinch kind of thing, and the guy put his hands on Aries, and Aries had enough and just punched the guy right in the eye. And a few guys, one of the referees, Adam Pearce, who is now the booker at this point, came out and pulled the fan who got punched and his 2 friends to the back, and it was dealt with there. But this was I read about this, but we did not see any indication that there was an altercation whatsoever here in the video.
No, I probably read that exact same report you did when that happened, but reading that Adam Pearce was the booker of Ring of Honor, it probably traumatized me so much that it just washed away all the other news in that paragraph as well.
ROH World Title match. The champion.
Not in the main event, by the way. We should mention, extremely rare for Ring of Honor to have the world title, which was by far the most well-protected championship in the United States at this point. And, you know, maybe only second to the GHC heavyweight title around the world as the most protected heavyweight title. Here, it is the semi-main event.
Yeah, the champion, Nigel McGuinness, against the challenger, Marufuji, who is a favorite of this podcast here. Every time we see Marufuji, it's a great time. And we get to see him one-on-one for the Ring of Honor title against Nigel McGuinness. Nigel comes out and, like we mentioned in part one, no audio whatsoever during the introductions. Which...
Yeah, not just no entrance music, but no crowd noise. So it's just it's earmuffs the whole way for the entrance. The thing I'm most disappointed by, and I guess without having the music, it allowed me to focus my frustration even more, is that Nigel didn't have his Union Jack iron with him as part of his entrance getup. Very disappointed.
Yeah, and I was disappointed I didn't get to hear his song, because he had an awesome theme song in Ring of Honor. He used a great Oasis song for his entrance. Nigel will be champion for 1 calendar year if he wins the match tonight.
Yeah, so he's been champion for longer than a year in total, as far as 365 or 366 days if it's a leap year, but not across a full calendar year. I think that's how they explained it, or maybe that's how they were describing.
That's how they explained Samoa Joe's reign.
Joe's reign, where it was like 2,000 days, but somehow still not a whole year. I didn't quite grasp the math there. But anyone that listens to the Big Audio Nightmare, particularly our G1 prediction show, can know that sometimes math gets the best of us when we're doing it on the fly on a podcast. Regardless, I note that there's cheers for Marufuji, a mix of cheers and boos for Nigel, who was a heel at this point, but it never really felt to me, just thinking back, that the crowd wanted him to be a heel. It just felt like something they kind of forced, to make for different matchups. Also notable that very, very, very young looking referee Paul Turner here, who would go on to be one of the main referees for All Elite Wrestling. Definitely remembered him in Ring of Honor, but my oh my, did I not remember him looking this young at this point. Gives the instructions in the middle like it's a big boxing or UFC fight, and the code of honor is respected here between these two men, somewhat dismissively by Nigel McGuinness, but the handshake happens, no shenanigans. We're also informed by Dave Prazak again that this is a rematch from the last time, or one of the last times, Ring of Honor was in New York City, in the smaller ballroom, the Grand Ballroom, which, by the way, was where I saw Samoa Joe and Kenta Kobashi live at a different show. Marufuji had defeated Nigel McGuinness, successfully defending his then GHC heavyweight championship. So this is a rematch, but a different title is on the line, and it's a different man holding a championship.
Match starts with a series of reversals and a stalemate. Marufuji hits a suplex, then does the move where he stands with Nigel's head between his feet while he's laying on the mat, and Marufuji does his spin to injure the neck of Nigel McGuinness.
Yes, and that sequence that you mentioned earlier was built all around the cravat, which one Nigel McGuinness liked to use very much. And Marufuji gets out of it a few times, rolls through, and Nigel still holds on. In some ways, it was kind of reminiscent of those long headlock spots in a Flair Steamboat match where no matter what happened, Steamboat would still end up with a side headlock. They were kind of doing the same thing here with their cravat. And then we had a series of pinning combinations, fish out of water style, leading to an indie standoff, which then eventually, as you talked about, led to that spinning neck snap with a feet spot. That it's one of those great things that it's a pro wrestling move that looks so debilitating, but it actually
safe as possible.
It's the safest move you've ever seen, but it looks like you're breaking the guy's neck, which is everything you want out of pro wrestling in a move.
Kicks by Marufuji, then puts on a submission with like a headlock and like the leg locked as well.
Yeah, this was really cool. This is again something where Marufuji a lot of times would just sort of make stuff up on the fly in a match. In some ways, like Mitsuharu Misawa would during his heyday, during his best years. And yeah, it's a headlock, and then he's got he's using his foot to grapevine Nigel's foot, almost like you would when you're doing an abdominal stretch, and then he uses that position to throw some downward elbows to the neck of the prone, partially standing Nigel McGuinness.
All Marufuji now with a 10 punch in the corner,
which cracked me up because I always remember all the stories, particularly around this time before, there were streaming services with Japanese wrestling, and like these guys would come over. And they didn't quite know or understand how big or how popular they were in the US, or really didn't understand how people knew them. So they just assumed they didn't. And so they would come over and they would want to do like really like US based spots, like American style wrestling, not really getting that the fans at these shows wanted to see them do the stuff they did in Japan. It was the same thing when Kobashi came over to wrestle Joe, and had no idea whether he'd be that over. And he kind of thought they were going to do a match where Kobashi was almost like a stereotypical type of heel. And Joe told him before the match, like, these people love you. Like, we've got to do a Kobashi match.
Yes.
And that's what ended up happening. And this just little 10 punch in the corner reminded me of that, because I've never seen Marufuji do that before. That's not a spot he would do in Japan, but he busted it out here, I guess, thinking that's what the people wanted.
Marufuji has Nigel bent over in the middle of the ring. He hits a quick kick to the face, then does a stomp to the back of Nigel's head, running him face first into the mat.
Basically a curb stomp. This is a move that Tyler Black, as Seth Rollins, would go on to steal and use for many years in WWE as a finisher, as Seth Rollins, before for a while they had him stop doing it, I guess, because they're worried kids were going to curb stomp their little brothers or something. But good stuff.
But most
here.
of the time, the curb stomp is done from like someone like on all fours,
yes,
or in a push-up position.
Have like a surfboard style position and kick the guy.
Here he's standing and just bent over. Like that's how far Marufuji gets to kick him in the back of the head to push him down to the mat. Head scissor on the mat by Marufuji, but he uses it to ram Nigel's face over and over while still in the head scissors. Yes, super cool.
Does this spot a couple times. He has him in the head scissors, rolls him over, drives his face into the mat multiple times, as you said, rolls back into the normal head scissors position, and then rolls back over again and does the same move once more.
Nigel whipped to the buckle, does his headstand in the corner, and kicks Marufuji, who goes down and rolls out to the floor. Marufuji's then softly thrown into the barricade.
Yes.
And then he comes charging in and eats a huge super kick by Marufuji.
Yes, yeah. Marufuji hits Nigel with the super kick and then hits the Shiranai, the sliced bread number 2, if you're a US-based wrestling fan. Hits that on the floor, rolls Nigel back into the ring for 2. And this is where I note that like everything they're doing is good, but this is sort of at a more relaxed pace than I would have expected from these two guys in an ROH world title match, co-headlining the biggest crowd that Ring of Honor has ever had. Like, it's not bad. Like, it's perfectly fine. It's good even, but it's for the moves they're hitting and the spots they're doing, it's done at a bit more of a deliberate pace than I think you would expect.
Nigel catches Marufuji on the top and hits a hammerlock power slam to injure the arm of Marufuji.
Yeah, like a hammerlock, like a Davey Boy Smith over the shoulder style power slam out of the corner, but with a hammerlock. Again, something pretty unique. And then Nigel, he does a lot of jawing with the fans here. He throws Marufuji through the ropes out to the floor. Again, I feel like that's a move we're seeing multiple times in every match, where the heel dumps the face out to the floor between the second and top rope. Nigel then, he's leaning through the ropes now, yelling at the fans. Great camera shot because we don't see Marufuji, and then out of nowhere he just appears in the frame coming across our screens and hits Nigel with a huge running drop kick landing on the apron. This was an awesome spot. It reminded me camera work wise of a few of those type of things. I think of a Rob Van Dam frog splash
Yes.
that we saw coming out of nowhere at Heatwave 98. I also think of Ric Flair just appearing flying through the air and landing on Terry Funk's back in the I Quit match. So this was some quality camera work here and direction from Ring of Honor, which you can't always say.
No, and just to reiterate how high Marufuji jumps on this dropkick, he's on the floor. Nigel is in the ring, leaning through the ropes, and
hanging over the second and third ropes.
Yes, and Marufuji's able to jump and hit this drop kick and lands on the apron like that. So he jumped to where he was kicking the guy and then landed down onto the apron of the ring. So
with
definitely
ease.
Impressive. Definitely.
And Lenny Leonard pointed out quite correctly that Marufuji would have had no problem catching McGuinness with that drop kick if McGuinness's head was draped over the top rope and not the second rope. He did this with ease.
Step up in Saguri. A lariat and a 2 count for Marufuji. He puts on a Cobra clutch and then takes him down with like a leg lock around the Cobra clutch.
Yeah, it was awesome. He has him with a Cobra clutch, and then he does Shinsuke Nakamura used to always do the flying armbar takedown. Or Minoru Tanaka would do this as well, not to be confused with Masato Tanaka, but Minoru Tanaka would do this. Here, Marufuji does this, but it's out of the Cobra clutch position. And then in that rotation, as he lands into the mat, he locks on a triangle choke while still holding on to the Cobra clutch. Again, really cool, unique, inventive stuff from Marufuji. He then, Nigel gets to his feet, and Marufuji then, while still holding on to the Cobra clutch, drops down into a lung blower, which, again, something you don't see every day out of that position.
Marufuji caught on the top rope again. He counters a Tower of London attempt, which was the story of the match. Whenever Nigel would go for the Tower of London, it was countered.
And the Tower of London, we should mention, by the way, is basically a diamond cutter where you have your opponent draped over the top rope. Their legs are on the top rope. They're hanging down, and then he pulls the guy out and hits a diamond cutter type move.
Shiranui attempt countered. Nigel holds him by the hair, bends him back a little bit, and kicks him in the back of the head, then instantly hits a forearm strike to the chest. I love the quick 1-2 move right there.
Yes. Nigel is so great here,
so
particularly
good
at this point. And he's a guy who you saw him maybe 5 years earlier. And he looked 5-6 years prior to this, he looked relatively hopeless. I remember seeing him come into IWA Mid-South in 2004 and think, oh, there's something to get there, but this guy isn't great. And then by this point, he's legitimately one of the best wrestlers in the world. And one of the biggest what ifs, if his career hadn't been derailed by just some horrific concussions. I think back to that great but horrifying match that he had with Bryan Danielson in the UK for Ring of Honor. And then
was that the match with all the headbutts?
Yes, the headbutts and the post, the head being pulled into the post.
Yeah.
Just some
Brutal.
of the most horrific head trauma you've ever seen in a wrestling match. That in some ways leading to him not being able to get the WWE deal that had been offered. He couldn't pass a physical. He then goes to TNA as Desmond Wolfe and is freaking fantastic there, has great matches with Kurt Angle, but that, for a multitude of reasons fizzles out. And you look at all the other guys that came through Ring of Honor during this time frame. You think of obviously CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, Tyler Black / Seth Rollins, all these guys. Nigel McGuinness 100% would have been, if he would have been healthy, would have been right at the top of that group of guys making their way into WWE. It's just a real shame that his peak wasn't able to be as long and as financially prosperous as it should have been.
No, he did reinvent his career as just an awesome color man for those NXT shows. I mean, he was spectacular. The combination of Nigel McGuinness and Mauro Ronaldo is one of the all-time great tandems on play-by-play. And they called some great matches. Maybe
the least WWE style commentary team, and Nigel McGuinness maybe, and I say that in the most complimentary way possible, maybe the least WWE style color commentator to ever actually break through and do commentary on big shows. So I was very happy for him that he got that run there at least, and hopefully made a little bit of good money working for WWE, even if it was very hard for him. He even talked about how hard it was for him to make it there and not be able to wrestle, but glad that he got something out of that after all those years.
Nigel puts Marufuji on the top rope, not the corner, but like between midway on the rope and the corner.
It's basically the way that Rob Van Dam would have his opponent set up when he was going to hit the Van Daminator off the top, when Alfonso would hold the chair up to the guy and he'd jump off the top. It's that position.
Nigel to the corner. He goes to the top, but Marufuji stands on the top rope and drop kicks Nigel, and he falls off the top to the floor.
Spectacular spot from Marufuji, basically running the top rope and hitting that drop kick, stopping the lariat attempt from Nigel before it could even happen.
Nigel back on the apron. They trade shots. He teases a Tower of London to the floor, but Marufuji counters with a super kick. Both men on the apron. We get another Shiranui, but this time onto the apron. That was crazy.
So they're both on the apron. Marufuji grabs him in the position to hit this Shiranui / bread, and then runs up the corner and flips back and hits the move, driving Nigel's back into the apron. As you said, this is a wild spot, and we should note that whatever sort of tentativeness or more casual, relaxed pace from these guys early, that's gone. This match is awesome by this point, and they are killing each other. Everything is precise and quick. They have found their groove.
Back in the ring, Nigel in, wait for it, the Tree of Woe.
Yes.
Marufuji tries a springboard coast-to-coast dropkick, Rob Van Dam style.
Not Shane McMahon style?
No, but Nigel is able to avoid the dropkick by doing a sit-up, which is the correct counter for that move.
Yes, while in the Tree of Woe. Crazy core strength from Nigel McGuinness here this deep in the match to be able to do that. A spectacular spot, and again, great camera work as we are in the corner, basically directly behind Nigel, and the visual of Marufuji just appearing as Nigel does the sit-up, Marufuji flying towards us. Very, very cool camera shot.
He climbs up, but Nigel crotches him, and Nigel hits the Tower of London to the ring apron for the first time in the match. Nigel now, he's favoring his right arm. Marufuji, he's put on the top rope again. Nigel off the corner, hits the lariat, gets a 2 count. Nigel goes for his headstand in the corner again, but Marufuji catches him with a super kick.
Right in the face. Another
brutal.
Great shot. He gets super kicked right in the face from a kayfabe standpoint. Terrible strategy here from Nigel. He has the man beat. He's hit him with his finishers or close to his finishers, and then his next offense is to do a headstand.
So Marufuji goes to hit the coast-to-coast drop kick again. The crowd loving it as he hits it, gets an awesome near fall. People really thought this might have been the finish.
Yeah, people are up out of their seats. They were both cheering the move and booing the fact that this was not a 3 count. People thought this was the finish for sure. Marufuji follows that up with a huge super kick and then a spinning super kick right to the face. He goes for one more. Nigel ducks, gets a 2 count off of a roll up. Marufuji kicks him off. Nigel goes flying back into the ropes, rebounds straight into the rebound jawbreaker lariat, and gets the win. An awesome finishing sequence here.
This is a great finishing sequence. Still your Ring of Honor champion. I thought this was an awesome match.
Yes.
Nigel wins. Great performance. You're right. It really it started, it was a slow build, and when they hit their stride, it was a million miles an hour to the finish. Great last few minutes. Great finish. Both the coast to coast drop kick could have been a finish. The jawbreaker lariat does get the finish, and just a great match. Had a ton of fun here.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so cool to see Marufuji at the height of his powers. This is, he still is pretty much junior heavyweight size, but this is as he had moved into being in the heavyweight division in Pro Wrestling Noah several years too late. You can go back and listen to about 400 episodes of the Big Audio Nightmare if you're an observer subscriber, and hear me and Mike Sempervive talk in detail about how much Pro Wrestling Noah dropped the ball and waited way too long to move Marufuji and Kenta into the heavyweight scene. But here he's at that level, but he still can do all the junior heavyweight high flying stuff. His body hasn't broken down enough to where he would maybe not be quite in 2021 what he was back then, even though he still is very good. Awesome to see that here, and just a great display as well for Nigel McGuinness as Ring of Honor World Champion. Just really solid, right around 20-minute high end Ring of Honor World title match. And that's not the end of the show. We still have the Fight Without Honor main event.
Yeah, no rules, street fight. Takeshi Morishima versus Bryan Danielson. This is the climax to what was their long feud, as again Dave Prazak catches us up.
Yes,
on the entire 6 months. Was it this feud?
It was
between
like
Morishima
16
and
months.
Danielson?
This started in August of 2007 when, in a match with Morishima and Danielson, Morishima hit Danielson so hard that it detached his retina. And the match had to be, it had a referee stoppage in that match. And this is in December of 2008. So that's how long this build to this feud ending match was. Morishima had a long run where he was basically mostly based in Ring of Honor, long Ring of Honor World Championship reign. When he lost that belt, he then went back to Japan and spent the majority of his time in Pro Wrestling Noah, but would come back on occasion and would come back here for this big feud ending match with Bryan Danielson.
So Morishima out first. Danielson's music plays, of course, the final countdown.
It doesn't play for us, though.
Doesn't play for us. I heard it in my head while I knew what was playing. But Danielson doesn't come out the entranceway or come down the ramp. The camera cuts back to the ring, and he's already there. He's in the ring as the camera cuts back. Danielson springboards to the top rope, hits a flying knee that knocks Morishima to the floor. A sliding drop kick, and Morishima's over the barricade into the crowd. Streamers fill the ring, and Danielson goes to the top and does a huge dive to the floor into the people, wiping out Morishima and the first few rows of fans. Banquet chairs everywhere. Yes. And we're off. What a hot start.
Oh, yeah. This again, this feels like a fight. It feels like Danielson wants to not only beat this man, but beat him up. He goes hurtling into the fans and almost crashes and burns himself into those banquet chairs. That was pretty scary. We should just catch people up a little bit on Takeshi Morishima if they've never seen him or if they've just heard about him. The best way I can describe Morishima was that he was a kid who grew up loving professional wrestling more than anything else in life. Grew up loving All Japan Pro Wrestling. And it's very, very evident when you watch him wrestle that he idolized and patterned himself after many of the top American stars in All Japan Pro Wrestling from the time period that he grew up watching, whether it be, a Stan Hansen, maybe a Steve Williams, and by far more than anyone else, Terry Bam Bam Gordy.
Yes.
He moved around the ring, particularly when he was younger. He moved like Gordy. He basically did all of Gordy's moveset. He actually had, just a few months prior to this match in August of 2008, had tryout matches both on Raw and SmackDown in Chicago, by the way, a show I was not at, but in Chicago for Raw with Charlie Haas, and then for SmackDown with Jamie Noble. And in this tryout, the main reason, you could say maybe the main reason he didn't get signed, sometimes with these tryouts, a lot of times it's just the Japanese company wanted to have their guy wrestle in front of a WWE audience just to get those pictures and be able to show them in the magazines. But the reason they didn't offer Morishima a contract was because Michael Hayes had heard over and over and over again how much this guy was basically Terry Gordy reincarnated, and it pissed him off. He saw Morishima out there and was like, oh yeah, this guy isn't Terry Gordy, who could be Terry Gordy, particularly to Michael Hayes. And that was pretty much the end of that. But that was just about 3.5 months prior to this match here for Ring of Honor.
Me want a tape of Jamie Noble and Morishima.
Yes.
Immediately.
Yes. And just seeing Morishima in a WWE ring would just be wild. He defeated Charlie Haas in 3 minutes with a missile dropkick, and then beat Jamie Noble the next night at the SmackDown taping. So to me, that doesn't sound like a guy who is just coming in for a photo op. Like, they had to have been high enough on him to want to not only see him, but have him beat rostered guys. That there was at least some thought that maybe they would sign him, but as I laid out, that ended up not happening.
Danielson, amongst the people here, he's loved to no one's surprise.
Yes. Amongst his people. It's not just the people, it is his people.
Back over the barricade, and they're fighting at ringside. Danielson grabs the ring bell hammer and goes for the eye to try to avenge his detached retina. He goes for the eye with the ring bell hammer.
Well, not only avenge his detached retina, but then also avenge the fact that in their rematch after that detached retina match, Morishima had vowed to not attack Bryan Danielson's eye, and then did so anyway and won by ref stoppage. So that's what took this from a competitive rivalry to a hated blood feud.
Running dropkick to a seated Morishima against the barricade.
Where have we seen that before? They needed Jamie Noble as an agent. That's what they needed here.
They fight on the ring apron. Morishima knocks Danielson off the apron to the floor. Danielson then grabs Morishima, teasing a powerbomb off the apron to the floor, but Morishima drops down ass first across the chest of Danielson.
Northern exposure.
Dare I say a modified northern exposure.
Yes. Tony Schiavone would call that almost a northern exposure. He'd be damn right. This was a northern exposure from the most unique position we've seen yet. The move of the podcast strikes again. And we should note that Takeshi Morishima is just
huge.
Massively large.
Huge.
Here. This is, and again, it's a guy much like we've talked about Ray Traylor, the big boss man, Big Bubba Rogers here on this podcast quite a bit. And the weight fluctuations and the wild swings in size, in mass. Morishima was another one of those guys. He was never svelte, but here he was just a massive humanity, dropping south here on Bryan Danielson. And then he throws him hard, recklessly into the barricades. And I can speak from experience as someone who sat front row a couple times at Ring of Honor and legitimately broke a bone in my hand from slapping the barrier, from pounding the barrier. This sheet metal hurts.
Yeah, just back to this northern exposure for a second.
Totally fine with that. We can do a sub podcast about that spot.
Seeing Danielson in this position, because Morishima holds it here, and you get a look and you see Danielson with his back bending against the edge of the ring,
Yes.
and the giant Morishima just pressed against his chest, squashing him. This was quite the visual. Then you mentioned Danielson to the barricade, and he is busted open on this hard sheet metal.
Yes, he's busted open. He's doing a tremendous job harkening back to some of the guys we've talked about on this podcast before, whether it be a Terry Funk or a Barry Windham, selling the not only the fact that they're bleeding, but that this immediate blood loss is, causing them to be woozy. Just great. Unsurprisingly, Bryan Danielson is great in this match. Let's just say that.
Yeah, he's on the apron, gets knocked off with a big lariat. Chair shot to Danielson's back. Squashes him against the barricade, and then head first into the ring post.
As he does, he hits this running hip attack up against the barricade with Danielson seated in a chair, as you do here on this evening at the Hammerstein Ballroom.
One of the moves of the night.
A child screams at Morishima, F you. But he does not say F you. He says the word. And I cackled with joy at that. And yeah, Morishima posts Danielson, as you said, throws him back into the ring. And Danielson is just fantastic here, looking out to the crowd, hanging over the ropes, bleeding. Thankfully, there is no Naomichi Marufuji to hit him with a drop kick while he's hanging over the ropes. That's about the only thing that didn't happen to him in this match.
Stiff punches, hard kicks by Morishima. Danielson in the ring. Morishima finds a chain and brings it into the ring.
Before that, he hits him with a short lariat, knocking him off the apron straight into the barricade. This lariat, it's like a half lariat, half like Vader hammer that he throws. And yeah, Danielson goes into the barricade, but Morishima needs more violence. So he goes out and gets the chain.
Yeah, he brings in the ring. He's choking Danielson with the chain. We get an awesome struggle and selling by Danielson as he's being choked out. You get the awesome visual with the blood as well. Danielson, just top-notch here. Absolutely incredible performance.
Dare I say, it's Justin Roberts level selling when being choked by an object with a knee in your back. I almost wonder if this led to that spot in the WWE a couple of years later. I say that half joking.
Morishima to the top rope. He misses a drop kick. Danielson.
Morishima to the top rope, and he misses a dropkick. I just want to reiterate that.
Danielson into the corner. He runs up the buckles. He flips over and knocks Morishima to the floor. And Danielson then with a tope to the outside.
Oh my God. He hits this elbow suicida, this Misawa-style elbow first suicide dive, and just careens into the front row. This wasn't quite super Kalo somersaulting and landing third row and breaking a fan's arm, which I was there for live at the United Center Nitro, but this wasn't far off. This is crazy. You got the crowd chanting best in the world, rightfully so, as a Bryan Danielson bloody and determined face looks at the camera.
Yeah, he knocks down Morishima, and he hit him so hard that he just continues to sail right over the rail and into the first row of seats. Yeah, absolutely
imagine
incredible.
the force and the acceleration that would cause you to dive through the ropes, hit Takeshi Morishima, and his body was not able to absorb all the energy, and Danielson still carried his way over into the first row. Wild stuff.
Back in the ring, Danielson goes to the top. He hits a drop kick to Morishima's knee. Big, hard kicks to the chest of Morishima. Gets a 2 count. He wipes the blood off his head and starts slapping his bloody hand across Morishima's face.
This was not quite as disgusting as my favorite / least favorite spot in wrestling, the blood transfusion headbutts when two bleeding men headbutt each other. This was still a little icky.
Morishima back on the attack, hits the world's biggest Uranagi for a 2 count.
My God. Yeah, what it lacked in Hiroshi Hase form, it more than made up for in just sheer force and violence. This was scary.
Giant lariat, speaking of force and violence. Danielson flips completely around. This was brutal.
This lariat from Morishima and this style, again, I had not watched a Morishima match in a long time. His running step lariat It's almost like a lariat version of a pump kick is the best way I can describe it. It is just this is on the Mount Rushmore of clotheslines that I've ever seen. Let's just put it that way.
Small package by Danielson, which he legit used as a finisher for
Yes.
a long time in Ring of Honor. So it gets a 2 count here, but a big reaction. Danielson then hits a German suplex. It was almost a delayed German suplex
Yes.
because it took so much power to get Morishima up for it, but he nails it, then quickly transitions to cattle mutilation in the center of the ring.
This is where I note that, yes, my memory was correct. The cattle mutilation was a much better move than the
Significantly
last
better.
chancery.
Morishima turns over, but Danielson starts raining down elbow strikes to Morishima. They trade forearms. Morishima doesn't move, but Danielson goes down with every forearm shot by Morishima. I love that.
They repeat this several times. Danielson will throw like 3 forearms. Morishima will throw 1 and knock him down. Danielson get up, do that again. Morishima knocks him down, and then we get a counter the next time.
Yeah, and he knocked him down hard with a huge lariat again.
Yes.
Morishima grabs the chain again. He starts choking Danielson, gets another 2 count.
Basically like a crossface or an STF style move, but with the chain as the thing giving the force. The crowd chanting, "Please don't tap." As you said, Morishima lets go and goes for the pin. Only 2. We get "Let's go" dragon chants. Then Morishima picks Bryan Danielson up, puts him on the top rope, ostensibly for a top rope backdrop driver. I do not want to see that happen to Bryan Danielson here.
And good news, you didn't, because Danielson slips out and then gets up. So they've reversed positions now on the top rope, and Danielson hits a belly-to-back suplex off the top rope.
On Takeshi Morishima. Just imagine that in your mind's eye.
He's a 300-plus pound human being here. Gigantic.
Yes. A good 15, 16 minutes into this absolute war. A spectacle of a spot, to be sure. Danielson is so great here, looking completely spent, but even more determined. Goes for the cover and only gets 2. And then Bryan Danielson finds the chain. Excuse me.
Yeah, he's choking Morishima with the chain, stomping him, puts on a triangle choke with the chain.
One upping the triangle choke based innovation from Marufuji earlier on, just 1 match prior.
Morishima is able to power out with a power bomb. Danielson off the second rope. He's caught in the air and dumped. Another lariat and the backdrop driver, but only a 2 count as Danielson gets his foot on the bottom rope at the last split second.
Yes, a great spot. Like you said, that lariat and backdrop driver absolutely would have been the finish, but it happens, instead of him suplexing him out of the corner into the middle of the ring, he's in the middle as he hits that backdrop driver, and Danielson lands up against the ropes. Easy for him to get his foot on the ropes, even though it's still dramatic. At this point, Morishima goes to wrap the chain around his arm. We're going to get a Morishima chain lariat? Jesus.
Yeah, he goes for the lariat, but Danielson counters into an armbar. He transitions to put the arms behind Morishima's back. He ties his hands together with the chain.
Basically handcuffs him with the chain. And right now what we're looking at is Morishima in the Mick Foley versus The Rock sort of position, where his hands are behind his back, defenseless, as Danielson is about to rain terror down on him.
Yeah, but Danielson runs in and Morishima just gets his boot up and knocks Danielson down. I had Jim Powers, Mike Sharp vibes on this one here.
I was gonna say this is the best possible version of the Jim Powers Mike Sharp spot, which again, if that's not a tease to go back and listen to our primetime wrestling episode of season 2, what is?
Danielson then from the ground kicks Morishima in the balls twice.
Yes, and that second one, so the first one is just an up kick directly to the nether regions, and then the second one is a running start and a punt directly below the belt. Again, fight without honor, and Danielson is taking that very seriously.
Yeah, Morishima is down, and Danielson repeatedly kicks him low while he's down. Then
It's basically a Garvin stomp, but if all 6 stomps were just to the groin.
Then he wraps the chain around his arm, and Danielson hits repeated elbow strikes to the head of Morishima with the chain over and over. He transitions to cattle mutilation, and Morishima is passed out. The referee calls for the bell. Your winner is Bryan Danielson. This match was brutal. It was great stuff.
Oh,
yeah.
Everything you want out of a feud-ending match. 2 great wrestlers, hatred, violence. In some ways, I've talked about it, not on this podcast, but I think I talked about it with you before. I know I talked about it on the Big Audio Nightmare, that to me, the Morishima-Danielson feud and matches were the closest we ever got to the perfect scary big man versus underdog babyface vibe that Vader and Sting did better than anyone in wrestling history. Just love the dynamic between these 2 guys.
Yeah, what a great match. What a great way to cap off just an awesome show. Top to bottom, this was start to finish. Just everything delivered. What a night for Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Final Battle 2008. Absolutely on paper looked incredible, and every single match delivered.
Yeah, every match delivered. Matches that, for a multitude of reasons, we maybe weren't looking forward to all that much, and we talked about on this part 2 of the podcast, Aries and Tyler Black. That ended up being much better than I think either of us were thinking going in, just based on our lack of positivity towards either of those guys back then. And then even that 6-man tag with Brent Albright and the boys against Sweet and Sour Inc. That was a fun breakneck pace, crazy street fight brawl. And yeah, really across the board, just really not a whole lot bad you could say about the show. Maybe too much Jimmy Jacobs, but
that's literally what I have. I've listed worst thing on this show. Too much Jimmy Jacobs is literally what I have written down. Yes.
I clearly would agree with that. And really, best thing there's a lot, but I think it's clearly the main event was just off the charts. Great. The world title match with seeing Marufuji at his peak and seeing Nigel really at his peak as well. That was good. Very good. Not a whole lot of bad things to say. I mean, going back to part 1, the Claudio and Kenny Omega match was
perfect
really
opener. It was a perfect
opener. And we talked about it in part 1, an opener that resisted a lot of the excesses that you would normally see right off the bat in Ring of Honor matches. So just a great show. And if it took the randomizer 3 seasons to get us a Ring of Honor show, it at least did us a solid. It didn't pick us, a random show from like 2014 or something. Like, it gave us something right in the wheelhouse of top tier Ring of Honor.
Yeah, no, this was great. It's everything we described is streaming right now with Ring of Honor. And if you haven't had Morishima in your life, if you haven't had 2008 Bryan Danielson in your life, go look this stuff up. Nigel McGuinness and Marufuji as well. It's a treat. So
yes, we should mention before we close it out, if you're wondering, as we talk about how great Morishima is here in this match, great run in Pro Wrestling Noah around this time. He got his WWE tryout. You're wondering what happened. His career really, really took a sad turn in 2015. He had to pull out of the Pro Wrestling Noah Global Tag League tournament due to injury. A blood test revealed days later that he likely had diabetes. He decided to immediately retire. But then later he recognized that the diabetes wasn't the reason of his retirement, vaguely said his bad physical and mental state. He was going to come back in 2018 to return at a show produced by Ricky Choshu. It was canceled, though, after Morishima it was announced that he had to have emergency surgery for arthritis in his foot. Then later that year, he was arrested late in the evening of November 4th, 2018, after assaulting a taxi driver, allegedly, refused to pay the fee
Was this in Buffalo with Patrick Kane?
No, shockingly not. Although I appreciate and respect your ability to link Patrick Kane and Takeshi Morishima. Again, you won't get that at any other podcast, but you will get it here. But no, he allegedly punched the taxi driver hard enough to break both of the man's cheekbones.
Good God.
So clearly every bit as hard of a hitter in 2018 as he was in 2008. He did not contest the charges and, is really largely faded from public view. A guy that just his whole life was professional wrestling and really, didn't really develop beyond that, personally, by all reports, and just a real sad end to a career that looked like it was going to be one that would really carry Pro Wrestling Noah, beyond the years of Kobashi and Akiyama and obviously Mitsuharu Misawa's tragic passing, in addition to, Kobashi retiring, other guys leaving. Sadly, things did not work out as planned, in the career and the life of Takeshi Morishima.
And you see this performance by Danielson and you think, this guy's just a couple years away from being wild and young on NXT.
Yes, you watch this match and then you think he's gonna be the Miz's rookie in a couple of years. What a world! What a time that the professional wrestling space was in at this time. Because you look at you watch this Ring of Honor show, and it was AEW before AEW in a lot of ways. It's not a one-to-one comparison, but there's the transparency overlays pretty well. It's also it's crazy how much Ring of Honor really was the bridge in the wrestling world, particularly during Ring of Honor's high points, which it hasn't been at for a long time. But it really was the bridge between the era of wrestling where ECW was a player to the era of wrestling that led to AEW emerging and becoming a player. It's really apparent here.
Well, and it also led to a great
PWG.
run. Yeah, and a great run of WWE when these guys got
Yes.
there. I mean, there's a lot of great matches that came out because a lot of the guys on this card ended up going there and bringing evolving that style to bring WWE some great matches in the years to come. So
it would have never happened without Ring of Honor. 100%. No, that's a great point.
Yeah, no, and a great show. Go out of your way to see it, and hopefully we get some more Ring of Honor as Season 3 rolls on. Let us know what you think. If you have memories of 2008 and the final battle, the best way to interact with the show is via Twitter or Instagram at WrestleAtRandom. You can send us a message there, and we try to respond to every single one. If you are not on social media, that's okay as well. You can send us an email, wrestlingatrandom@gmail.com. And of course, the best way to support the show is via our Patreon, patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom, where we have bonus content where we put out an extra show every single week. You sign up there, you get the extra shows. If you were a subscriber between seasons 2 and 3, you didn't miss a beat. We were putting out weekly episodes there. There's hours and hours of content. As a new subscriber, you pick it up today, and you have a ton of content that you have not heard anywhere else waiting for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We during the entire, as you said, the entire season break of between season 2 and 3, we kept doing podcasts over there. New content every single week, and that continues as we're into season 3. So if you want even more Wrestling at Random in your life, support the show, help us keep going as it always does when people support it, and get 2 shows from us each and every week.
And get yourself a t-shirt while you're at it, at Wrestling at Random, at the Patreon there. You can sign up for the tier where you can get yourself a t-shirt in addition to the bonus content. Then after you get your shirt, you bump yourself down to just the bonus audio tier. You don't miss a beat. You get yourself an awesome shirt. And I will throw in a couple of early 90s WCW trading cards, some stickers for Wrestling at Random logos as well. So go ahead and support the show that way. If you can't support the show financially in these times, we understand as well. Telling your wrestling fan friends about the show is another way you can support us for free. Subscribing to the podcast, following the podcast, whatever your podcatcher of choice. Click that button. Never miss an episode. Tell your wrestling fan friends about us, and tell your friends that used to be wrestling fans about the show. They might want to take a trip down memory lane with us as well.
Yes, 100%. I would think that if you told a former friend who you know is a wrestling fan, about this show and about, hey, like, if you ever seen Ring of Honor, like, you should check this out. I always say that it won't bring back your friendship. This show might just do it. Those last 2 matches, this entire Ring of Honor show, and listening to this podcast, it may mend those fences. So hop to it.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy, as always.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Talk to you again